Britain, home to some sweet and endearing,
Poor old Sweep.
and some scary looking puppets.
Oh, hello. Deary me, we have been getting into lots of trouble, haven't we?
Okay, maybe not that dark most of the time, but still, many people do envision the UK hosting some of the most wholesome programs you'll ever find on television. And it seems like with the Sesame Street model, what's any better way by representing this via a cuddly looking puppet? But over the years, there's been certain types of puppets where they were created for a children's property, but they don't exactly look that friendly. But as well as that, the Brits have provided puppet franchises that have redefined the art to be so much more than just standard kiddie fare. So in today's program, we're going to be doing something a little bit special. We're diving deep down into an iceberg chart, all about UK puppetry, starting all the way from the top with the best known franchises / characters, and gradually working our way down to the curiously obscure characters. And expect this video to be well cultured, as we'll be going from England, Scotland, Wales to Ireland. Oh, and just as a small side note before we begin, as an ignorant Englishman, I don't speak any other British language apart from English. And we are going to talk about several properties that only exclusively speak in Gaelic, Welsh and Irish. So my sincere apologies if I do butcher any of the pronunciations of any upcoming names. I've additionally tried to have been pretty fair on how I've ranked all of these on the list, but I can easily imagine if I was 10 to 30 years older, some of the things further down the iceberg might be slightly higher up. And I've mainly looked at this chart from the perspective of a citizen of the UK, so perhaps some of the characters in level 1 I wouldn't envision an American initially knowing off by heart. But I imagine in this video you'll either be reintroduced or even experience many of these puppet characters for the first time. Before we start, I want to give a little shout out to Miss Flux, who both gave the idea to this video and introduced me to Iceberg charts. This has been like my all-time favourite new website to revisit for the last 3 weeks. While making this chart, I'm dying to make more. And then there's the Facebook user Sooty Sweep and Sue, who's your go-to geezer if you want to learn about any obscure British puppet. Thanks to them, this video has easily quadrupled in length. Sooty is a little yellow bear with the capability of performing magic, although he has a very quiet voice, speaking to others by whispering in their ear. Because of this, in the show, Sooty's voice has never been heard. He's accompanied with his best friend Sweep, who's a dog that communicates by squeaking, and then there's Sue, who's the oldest and the most mature out of the trio. And unlike Sooty and Sweep, she can actually speak out loud verbally. There are various other puppets, but Sooty, Sweep and Sue are the 3 main puppets of the Sooty franchise. And since the 1950s, there hasn't been one generation of Brits that have gone on by without being somewhat familiar of Sooty and his friends. There's always been a rendition or incarnation of the Sooty show on television. So far, there have been 3 human presenters of the Sooty show. First, there was Harry Corbett, the founding father of the franchise. And then his son Matthew Corbett took over, and finally today with Richard Cadell, a longtime Sooty fan, is the current presenter / right holder of the Sooty franchise. Rainbow was the British equivalent to Sesame Street, airing for 25 seasons and 1002 episodes. The characters of the show featured Geoffrey, the human presenter, who lived with and looked after Zippy, George and Bungle. The show was abruptly cancelled in 1992, with actor Geoffrey Hay only finding out through a newspaper that he was out of a job. Rainbow proved to be such a beloved property that its new right holders attempted twice to reboot the series, however without any of the original cast and crew to be involved. The new programs wound up being an abysmal failure. Today, a fair few episodes from both reboots are not available to watch anywhere, making them lost media. Thunderbirds was a marionette series that aired on ITV from 1965 to 1966. The show was created by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson. Jerry Anderson in particular is often regarded as the British Walt Disney, and we're certainly going to see a fair few of his shows on the Iceberg, but Thunderbirds in particular is both his most well-known and most successful program he ever made. The premise was about the billionaire Tracy family, where they build specialized rescue vehicles to aid and help in extreme rescue missions. Running on ITV between 1976 and 1981, The Muppet Show was filmed, shot and produced in Britain. It was a desired pet project by Jim Henson, who for years was trying to get his Muppet characters on a primetime show, probably thanks to the association of Henson and the Muppets. The Muppet Show is easily the most famous and well-known British puppet show of all time. The Tweenies was a CBeebies programme, running between 1999 and 2002 with 390 episodes, starring 4 primary school children, Jake, Milo, Bella and Fizz. Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons is an action sci-fi marionette show. The concept is about Scarlet, who is killed and duplicated by the Mysterons, a Martian race who intends to take over the Earth. However, the Mysterons loses their control over Captain Scarlet, who returns back to his life as it was before. However, being an alien duplicate, he is virtually indestructible and turns out to be a vital asset of fighting against the Mysterons. This was yet again another creation by Jerry Anderson. Teletubbies was created by Ragdoll Productions in association with the BBC. The inception for the show was to create something aimed to very small children. Airing between 1984 and 1990 was the UK version of Fraggle Rock. It was virtually identical to the American rendition, barring a recasting of the human character and a change of scenery, all now set at a lighthouse. Unfortunately, the archiving of the UK rendition of Fraggle Rock has not been well documented. After intensive efforts from several different parties, only 29 episodes exist in a broadcast quality. However, as of 2020, it has since been rediscovered that every episode does still exist, albeit in lesser quality. Stingray was an action-packed marionette program that aired on ITV in 1964, being yet again a creation by Jerry Anderson, about an advanced task force who patrols the oceans with an advanced submarine. Known as Stingray, they mainly fight against marine aliens that live deep down in the Earth's oceans. Rod Hall was a British comedian who had a long-running act with an emu puppet. While the act was originally conceived in Australia, the pair took off with great success in the UK. His countless shows made him a millionaire, but it all came to an end by the late 80s, as his novelty act had, well, sort of fizzled out with the public, and due to poor management with his money, he became bankrupt in 1994. For the remaining years, he just lived a simple and quiet life, until his sudden death in 1999. 8 years later, his eldest son, Toby Hall, did star in a short-lived revival of Emu. Today, there are a couple of episodes from his run that are no longer available to watch. Basil Brush was a well-spoken Fox character that's had a couple of shows over the years and has appeared on numerous British programmes since the early 1960s, so far being performed by 2 actors. But maintaining that Basil is a real person, they've never once been listed or credited on any Basil Brush projects. Keith Harris had been a ventriloquist actor, producing and making characters since his teenage years. First appearing on the mid-60s on television, he really hit his big break when he created the duck character Orville. In the 80s, he had a long-running television show on BBC, and even some of his more popular puppet characters appeared on a cartoon spin-off. But eventually his show wound up being cancelled, and not reading the fine print in his contracts due to his dyslexia, he had lost the majority of his fortune. but he was able to somewhat make a second comeback in his career through the theatre circuit and producing and directing pantomimes, and he made a small handful of cameos on television. It was far from his glory days, but certainly not the same situation as Rob Hole and Emu. In 2015, after a long battle with cancer, Keith Harris passed away at the age of 67. Horrible Histories originally started as a series of children's books, but in 2009 the franchise had exploded into a successful CBBC series, often being called that generation's Monty Python. A character made exclusively for the series was a rat called Rat Raticus. He was somewhat the presenter of the show. Hacker T-Dog originated on the CBBC programme Scoop, but the character proved to be so immensely popular that he was brought onto CBBC to present during the weekdays. It was from this point that Hacker had a much more fleshed out personality, such as being able to speak fully in English, where in Scoop he was only able to grunt and growl. As of the recording of this video, Hacker is still making regular appearances on CBBC, making him the longest running puppet host character for the channel.
We're just normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
Hacker has as well got a half-brother called Dodge the Dog. Initially he was brought on to replace Hacker for when Hacker was off filming other shows, but now Dodge has migrated over to CBeebies. As the main channel puppet between 1988 and 1992, Ed the Duck was a regular host on the CBBC. He couldn't exactly speak, instead he squeaked. Gordon the Gopher was another CBBC co-hosting puppet, making regular appearances between 1985 and 1987, with his human co-host being a very young Philip Schofield. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is a puppet series that originated on YouTube. In every episode, it seems like that is a series that's aimed towards a preschool audience. But gradually, the tone of the program begins to shift, becoming something quite unnerving. Strange Hill High was a CBBC program, featuring rod puppets about secondary school where odysseys frequently occur. Between 1999 and 2005, the BBC did a series of factual documentaries, being all about prehistoric life. Being done in the style of a wildlife documentary, the shows brought to life the creatures via CGI and integrating practical effects, using very similar techniques to Jurassic Park. Thingamabobs was a program that aired on BBC in 1972. While only 13 episodes were produced, the program has had a long-lasting legacy, with its episodes frequently being on rotation on the BBC. Spitting Image is a satire show mocking and parroting celebrities and politics of the day. The initial run lasted for 18 seasons on ITV between 1984 and 1996. It became such an icon in British media. Either likenesses of politics that appeared on the show wished that they weren't, or politics that weren't featured on the programme secretly wished that they were. The show did receive a revival in 2020, and it was just as successful as before. However, it was unfortunately cancelled after 2 years. Monkey is a hand-knitted puppet, who's mainly appeared on UK TV commercials, the first being during the ITV digital campaign, but later on being far more well known in the PG Tip adverts. In most of Monkey's TV ad campaigns, he's appeared alongside a human co-star, being named Owl. In the Night Garden is a CBeebies program set within a fantasy forest. The show made special emphasis of having a calming and laid-back tone. It was deliberately designed for children between the age of 1 and 6 to watch and settle down to before their bedtime. The producers of the show pointed out on how there can typically be unwarranted tension of children that don't want to go to bed. So In the Night Garden was made as a response to that issue. Joe 90 was the penultimate series of Jerry Anderson to feature and utilize his trademark supermarionation puppets. Joe's stepfather has built a machine capable of transferring expert knowledge to any individual. Joe's often sent out on secret missions, where beforehand he's given the required knowledge that he needs to fulfill the task at hand. Fireball XL5 was the last of the black and white series for Jerry Anderson, set in the far future of 2062, where Colonel Steve Zodiac, along with his crew Dr. Venus and Robert the Robot, are part of the Wild Space Patrol, heading out to spread authority across the solar system. Oh, and also as a way to get around putting the space helmet over the marionette strings. Well, guess what? There's no need for spacesuits. You see, it's the future. They've got a thing called oxygen pills.
Here, take this. It's an oxygen pill. It'll enable you to live in space.
Terrorhawks was the final puppet series produced by Jerry Anderson, set in the not too far distant future of 2020, wait a minute. But anyway, the show is about an Earth defense crew called the Terrorhawks. After a band of alien misfits led by the android Zelda takes over the Earth-based set on Mars, they have their eyes set on Earth. The Terrorhawks are going to have to do whatever it takes to foil their evil schemes. While it wasn't exactly as successful in the same leagues as Thunderbirds, Terrorhawks still had a fair run on the telly, lasting for 3 seasons and 39 episodes, with a reboot currently in the works. The Zingzillas was a CBeebies program about a primate band who always found themselves in a tricky situation, but thankfully it would all be resolved just in time for them to perform the Big Zing. Tots TV starred a trio of puppets, the red hair named Tilly, the blue hair named Tom, and finally the green hair called Tiny. They go out on daily adventures with their magic bag that usually gives them a desirable object that they need in the moment. Tots TV ran throughout the 90s on ITV and had a number of 276 episodes. Thimbles was a CBeebies program that ran for 2 years on the channel, totaling 200 episodes, starring a trio of Thimbles, with the supporting cast such as Rocket the Frog, Bessie, who's the mother figure of the show, and the good old-fashioned Roly Mole, who would usually cap off every episode by reading a story.
Are you sitting comfortably? That's cool, yes. Then I'll begin.
Muffin the Mule originated from the Hargarve Puppet Company during the 1930s, but after World War II, TV producer Andrew Miller-Jones saw potential for some of the Hargarve puppets to make it on children's television. This eventually would lead to the Muffin the Mule show, hosted by Annette Mills. The program first broadcast in 1946. Muffin was perhaps the first true really successful children's character on the BBC, with a spawn of merchandise and licenses for the character. Unfortunately, after a 9-year run, Annette Mills had passed away, leading to the cancellation of the program. Although Muffin did have a brief resurgence on ITV with a different host a few years later. While Muffin hasn't had as many revivals like Sooty or Basil Brush, the character has made numerous reappearances and cameos in other projects, and is still a sweetened household name to those of a certain age. Brum was about the adventures of a small replica vehicle. When his owner's not looking, he sneaks out to the big city, meeting new friends and getting up to mischief and adventures. The show ran for 11 years on the BBC, lasting for 4 seasons and 66 episodes. Ray Allen was considered one of the best ventriloquists in Britain, with his longest running puppet being Lord Charles. He created him when he was 19 years of age, with 2 Hollywood legends being Laurel and Hardy acting as creative consultants over the look of the puppet and his act. Him and Lord Charles appeared on numerous variety and talk shows back in the day. Ray Allen stopped performing in the late 2000s. He only intended this to be a short-term break, but by 2010 he passed away at the age of 79, bringing the act to a close. Otis the Aardvark was a co-host on the BBC's Children's Block. He was present on the channel between 1994 and 1999. The character was officially retired in 2001, although he has occasionally made reappearances over the years, like the Puppet special on The Weakest Link and CBBC's 30th anniversary. Oucho T. Cactus was the co-host on CBBC between 2007 and 2010, being part of the double act with Ed Petrie. Oucho spoke in his own unique Cactus language, with Ed acting as the translator for the audience.
What am I looking for? What am I looking for? A man talker! Man talker! No, what? A mango? No, there's a man talker! Man talker! Manuel! Picture of a man called Manuel! No! What do you want? A man talker! Oh, a manual! What do you say so?
Actor Greg Davies would be a recurring guest star for Ed and Oucho, mainly playing as various historical characters. Ed and Oucho as well received their own spin-off show titled Ed and Oucho's Excellent Inventions, where they would head all around the UK, meeting kids and building their submitted drawing inventions into something physical and functional. Unfortunately, there are several episodes from the series that aren't available to watch online. Something that I always used to wonder about the spin-off show. Did any of the kids get to keep the inventions? Well, if you were one of those little pipsqueaks, then be sure to let me know. In the Dick and Dom and Deep Bungalow show, they had a recurring cat character referred to as, well, the neighbour's cat, often telling Dick and Dom the places he's been to around Britain in the form of a song. There would also be a turtle's head that would peer out the toilet that would tell, well, some rather cheesy jokes.
Here, what's a porcupine's favourite food? Pickled onions!
Stanley is the co-host of the CBBC Saturday morning programme Saturday Mashups, that began airing in September of 2017. Milkshake Monkey is the mascot for Channel 5's primary school block Milkshake. Monkey first appeared on the channel in 2009, and at the time of me recording this video in 2024, the character is still going strong. Barnaby Dixon is a British YouTuber where he self-builds puppets that are designed to go around his hands, with his bird Dabchick being his best well-known creation. But Barnaby Dixon is always creating new puppets and experimenting with the medium. Comedian Ken Dodd began referring to the people that lived at Knotty Ash as the Diddy Men, what began as a little in-joke for his performances. He began bringing on stage marionette versions of the titular Little Men. This eventually led way to a television series to be made of the puppets, lasting between 1969 and 1973. Captain Pugwash was a children's pirate series that first aired on the BBC. There's been a couple of different versions of the series over the years, but the first one used cut-out puppets to bring the characters to life. On the long-running Harry Hill programme, Harry's got a pet cat called Starfur, who's portrayed as a blue rubber puppet. Running for 3 seasons on CBeebies was Big and Small, about 2 friends that live together, one being called Big, the other being called Small, their names being an obvious indication of their size. The Riddlers was about a lady named Marjorie Daw, who lived with 2 Riddlers who loved to riddle things out. The show aired on ITV between 1989 and 1998. With a program count that expanded over 200 episodes. Bear Behaving Badly is about a little bear called Nev, who lives with a human called Barney in an apartment. The caretaker of the place is called Mr. Pranks, who him and Nev don't get along very well. Not helping matters is that Mr. Prank is allergic to bears, so he keeps on sneezing when he's nearby Nev. There's also a koala called Crazy Keith who secretly lives under the floorboards. The show ran for 4 seasons on CBBC. In 2007, the War Horse novel was adapted for the theatre circuit, bringing the animals to life by rig puppets. In 2019, the story of Life of Pi was readapted to be performed on stage. Its animals were brought to life by choreographed rig puppets. The Flower Pot Men featured 2 marionette puppets called Bill and Ben, who lived in 2 separate plant pots in a garden. Between them is a weed flower just simply called Weed. Bill and Ben were well known for having an odd way of speaking, mainly making the noise of flobberdob. The Wooden Tops was a marionette family that aired on the BBC during the mid-50s all the way up to the early 1970s. The main aim of the programme was to teach small children about family life. Indigo Pipkins was a show similar to Sesame Street in nature, initially about a puppeteer called Indigo, where his creations come to life. However, the actor George Woodbridge passed away while season 1 was still in development. They subtly written around this in some of the episodes, explaining that he went off on a fishing holiday. But the show was so popular that the producers didn't want to prematurely end it, so Indigo's death was written into the show. A thirst for children's television, predating the handling of Mr. Hooper's passing in Sesame Street by at least a decade. In 2020, the same creative team behind Pipkins made a new preschool series for CBeebies called Monty and Code, acting as a spiritual successor to Pipkins. The Smash Martians was an ad campaign that lasted between 1973 and 1992. The Smash Martians were a group of alien robots that found humans to be extremely hilarious on seeing on how humans take the tedious task of preparing mashed potatoes, where if they use the product Smash they can get it in a few easy steps. Clearly the peak in their technological advancements.
They are clearly a most primitive people.
For mash, get smash.
Mongrels was an adult puppet series that aired on BBC Three, following the exploits of 5 puppet animals. The show received favourable reviews when it was first aired, but due to poor ratings it wasn't renewed for a 3rd season. But some of the mongrel characters do occasionally make cameos in other projects. Jim Henson the Storyteller was an anthology series retelling old European folktales, with the Jim Henson Creature Shop supplying the programme with all the extraordinary animals and monsters. The show lasted for 1 season and 9 episodes. Squiggler is the main character for the CBeebies series Get Squiggling, encouraging young tots to put their crayons to the paper. Jackson and Jelly are brother and sister who live in a library. They starred in the BBC programme Storymakers, where with a human presenter they create stories, which had an extraordinary run lasting for 4 seasons and 245 episodes. Jackson and Jelly would as well appear on other CBeebies shows of the time. Rosie and Jim was a ragdoll production that aired on CITV about 2 dolls that come to life, named Rosie and Jim, who both live on a canal boat. And whenever they stop, they head out on a new adventure. The show ran for 8 seasons and 175 episodes. There were 3 human presenters over the course of its run, with Neil Bruner as the longest serving host. Andy Pandy was a marionette series that first aired live on the BBC in 1950. The initial run lasted for about 26 episodes, but the show was later brought back in 1970 to film 13 new colour episodes. The show would be revived once again in 2002 as a stop-motion series, having a run of 2 seasons and 52 episodes. Bodger and Badger was a children's TV show that starred the exploits of Bodger and his badger, first airing on the BBC in 1989, and production ceasing in 1999, having a good 10-year run on the telly, lasting for 9 seasons and having 124 episodes, although unfortunately over the years several of the programs have become missing media. Here Comes Mumphrey was a marionette series, which was the first attempt to adapt the Mumphrey books in a visual medium. Come the 90s, the Mumphrey franchise would have a more successful run on television as an animated series by Britt Allcroft. Mumphrey's first run out on TV has not been well archived. For a long while, all 52 episodes of the series were not available to watch. It wouldn't be until early 2023 that YouTube user ADC would upload 6 episodes online, coming from a rare compilation tape that was released in the early 80s. The Munch Bunch was a multi-medium franchise project, first being released as books during 1979, and coinciding with the books was a puppet series that aired during the early 80s, lasting for about 4 seasons, although episode availability is rather sparse today, as only a handful of the episodes can be watched online. Big Babies was a CBBC show that aired in 2009 for 13 episodes, showing the day-to-day day-outs of Brooke and Rocco the babies. The toys, portrayed as puppets, fearing that the babies are in danger, sends out the plushy Budge to keep a close eye, although he only participates in the missions for his own exploits. Swag the Bag was a channel mascot for CITV during the early 2000s, having a notable duty of looking after the prizes for any competition that the channel was hosting.
Don't do that, it's rude. Bye!
Roland Rat and his pals appeared on British television, first on TV-AM in 1983, and then making regular appearances on the BBC during the early to mid-80s. He later had his own TV show on Channel 5 in the late 90s. Roland is a laid-back LA-style rat, who's got absolutely no filter over him, and just says what's on his mind. Zig and Zag were twin aliens that came from the planet Zog. First appearing on Irish television in 1987, they moved over to the UK in 1992. After the hop over the pond, the characters were immensely successful in the nation, appearing on many shows, spawning loads of merchandise, and even received a 2016 animated series reboot. Little Monster was amongst the core cast members in the CBeebies series Justin's House. She didn't have a voice, but she would still help out Justin and the gang. Bob Carolgees was a famous TV host during the 70s and 80s, starring alongside his puppet co-stars. There was Charlie the Monkey, Cough the Cat, and his most famous one, Split the Dog. His filthy habit is pretty self-explanatory. Bob is semi-retired now, but he does occasionally make guest appearances and cameos on TV, although sadly quite a bit of his body of work isn't available to watch online. Doodle Doo was an arts and craft program made for CBeebies in 2006, with presenter Chris Crawlin alongside his little doodle buddies, as they make and demonstrate as to what kids can create at home. The Hoobs was a puppet show collaboration between the Jim Henson Company and Decoder Entertainment. The series aired on Channel 4 during the early 2000s, about Hoobs from Hoobland travelling to Earth, going all around the world to answer various questions. They place the answers they learn in a Hoobasebia. Moppertop Shop is ran by Moppertop and his assistant Papa Duck, where they sell nearly any item to the customer's pleasure. The program was designed to teach young children the values of good communication and being well-spoken. The show aired on CITV, running for 6 years with 4 seasons and 260 episodes. The program was a co-production with the Jim Henson Company. The show even utilised recycling a couple of the Henson puppets. Do those mice look familiar by any chance?
As poor folk live in misery.
It's even worse for mouses.
Please, sir, I want some cheese.
Pinky and Perky first appeared on BBC television in 1957. They were two little pigs with high-pitched voices, a technique done by speeding up the voices to make them sound high-pitch. Similar to the chipmunks in America, the pigs would additionally lip-sync to songs that were popular back in the day, all with the frequency up to fit the voices. During their BBC days, they had their own show, Pinky and Perky Code. In the programme, they would film at PPC TV, located right next to the BBC, featuring a variety of other marionette characters. Pinky and Perky's time on the BBC ended in 1968. They would appear on a couple of other programmes on ITV between 1970 and 1971. In 2008, Pinky and Perky returned back to the BBC in a new CGI reboot show that lasted for 52 episodes. Hector's House was a puppet show that showed the day-to-day activities of Hector the dog, Zaza the cat, and Mrs. Kiki the frog. The show was initially filmed and spoken in French, and was later redubbed into English by the BBC and aired on the network. Reportedly, the BBC renditions were very faithful to the original French versions, with only minor deviations.
I am going to get my gun.
Oh, I must get away. Get away, get away.
Whoever you may be, come out. Come out of there at once.
Supercar was the first sci-fi focused program for Jerry Anderson, and was the first of his shows to use the term filmed in Super Marionation, aka luxurious marionettes. It ran for 2 seasons, first airing on ITV between 1961 and 1962. Button Moon aired on ITV during the 1980s, being about the antics and the adventures that the Spoon family would be up to when they travel up to Button Moon. Get Well Soon was a CBeebies program starring Ran Xing, where he would be a doctor to puppet patients. The show gave well-meaning and general medical advice to small children. Scally the Dog was a co-host on the ITV Afternoon Kids block, appearing between 1989 and 1991, and reappeared during CITV's 20th anniversary. Bro and Bro were smart-talking wolves that first appeared on CITV in 1992, hosting the program What's Up Doc, showing a variety of different Looney Tunes cartoons. 1 year later, the show was rebranded as Wolf It, where the Bro Wolves were now the main highlight of the program. There's a running gag where the brothers' names are never truly revealed. Anytime somebody does try and say their names, it usually gets covered up by some loud noise. Mr. Bloom's Nursery was a CBeebies program that ran for 3 seasons, starring Mr. Blooms and his sentient veggies. Me and My Monsters was a co-production with several different companies, with Jim Henson, the BBC, Tiger Aspect, and Nickelodeon Australia, which the country was where all the episodes were made to. The program was a sitcom about a family dealing with monsters that are living down in the basement. The show was originally filmed for 26 episodes for the first season, but when it was aired, it was presented in 2 seasons, 13 episodes each, with no more episodes commissioned after the 26 had aired. The Tales of Aesop was a BBC reimagining of all the stories from the author coexisting together, with the characters being brought to life by puppets, and Tom Baker narrating the series. 13 episodes were produced, and re-ran continuously on the BBC during the 90s. Oscar the Puffin featured on the Puffin Pla show on ITV. It had an immensely long run on television, lasting from 1963 all the way up to 2013, where the programme was quietly dropped off. The Samiat, or sometimes referred to as the Sand Fairy, is a magical creature that first appeared in the children's book 5 Children in It. His shtick being that he can grant wishes, although they only last until sunset. There's been a fair few adaptations of the book over the years, but one of the first major ones was in 1991, where the BBC did a 6-part miniseries. It was immensely successful, receiving 2 more sequel series. Roger and the Rotten Trolls was a CITV program that ran between 1996 and 2000. The series is set within a valley filled with trolls, where their ruler is a 10-year-old lad called Roger Wozia. He teaches the trolls about the customs of human civilization, as well as learning a few things of himself. The series was immensely popular when it was released, winning a BAFTA for Best Children's Program.
He noticed the radar was picking something up. Television. Now, the Rotten Trolls had never seen television before. So next day, when King Roger came up the valley...
Morning! Anyone fancy playing Rat Up a Drain Pipe?
Unfortunately, out of 34 episodes that were produced, only 6 of them can be easily accessed online. Boo Bar was a show very similar in nature to Teletubbies, starring multicolourful beings with extraordinary superpowers, with each episode not really having an overarching narrative, but instead a series of different segments. Honey Monster was a cereal mascot for the brand Honey Monster Sugar Puffs. The character was first introduced in 1976, and while he hasn't made any more commercial appearances in nearly 15 years, the cereal is still being sold in UK stores. Bits and Bobs was a CBeebies program, being about 2 sentient fluff balls who travel inside a toy named Trog. The trio noticeably go to many Scottish locations. Big City Park is a co-production between 16 South and BBC Scotland, being shot on location at Belfast in Northern Ireland, set at the real-life Ormo Park, featuring characters of Billy the Badger, Dara the Fox, and a troll named Ruari. Together with the human host May, they show children the beauty and value of the great outdoors. Beep the Meep was a Doctor Who villain that originated in a comic strip in 1980, titled Star Beast. The story was eventually readapted for a televised adventure for Doctor Who's 60th anniversary. Meep was brought to life via a costume actor and animatronics. Step Inside is about Mr. Mopple, where in every episode he reads a story. He's surrounded by a variety of different puppets in a living house, who often inject their own thoughts as the story is read out. Wizardora is about a young lady who's trying to get to grips with magic. She lives in a house surrounded by many different puppet characters. The show aired on CITV throughout the 90s, lasting for 7 seasons and 200 episodes. The Adventures of Twizzle was a 1957 marionette children's series, where Twizzle was a toy having the ability to stretch their arms and legs. This was notably the first TV series produced under by Jerry Anderson, although the only reason he took on the series to begin with was that his studio was desperate for work. Out of 52 episodes of Twizzle, only 1 being the first is known to exist. Dylan the Crocodile was the star puppet character in the children's factual documentary special, Dinosaurs Fun, Fact and Fantasy, with several dinosaur puppets plus a Welsh dragon making an appearance by the end of the programme. Bosco was an Irish programme featuring a little puppet as well called Bosco. The aim of the programme was teaching children on speaking Irish. Bosco would mainly speak English but integrate several Irish words, similar to Dora the Explorer teaching Spanish. Nobby the Sheep was a co-host on the Saturday morning kids block Ghost Train. The programme had a special emphasis on airing shows that had a bit of a spooky nature, like Scooby-Doo and The Real Ghostbusters. Grogbags was a spin-off series from the Emu franchise, with Grogbag returning and having a host of minion puppets, as the series would be an episodic showing of their day-to-day lives. Noddy had a marionette series between 1955 and 1958. Various clips from random episodes have been shared online over the years, although today only one episode is available to watch in full online. The Secret Service was the final Gerry Anderson series to be filmed in Super Mario Nation, starring the secret spies Father Stanley Unwin, an eccentric middle-aged priest, and his partner Matthew Hardin, who often gets shrunk down for the mission at hand. Stanley has the unique ability of speaking Unwinese, a tactic that he uses to confuse any of his oppositions.
You're not obliged to say anything unless you wish to do so, but what you say may be put into writing and used in evidence.
Ah, yes. Write your scribbly in your bookery. All uttery words, speed of your pen slow must deceive my eyeball.
I didn't quite catch that, sir.
Not too sure if that would work with a real police officer, but anyhow, the show was extremely short-lived, only running for 1 season and 13 episodes. And unlike a lot of other Gerry Anderson series where they've been re-ran over the years, Secret Service hasn't re-emerged on television not since the mid-70s. Barnaby Bear is a character from Becky and Barnaby Bear. Residents from Cheshire, they travel all over Britain, learning about various highlights on the communities that they go to. In 1991, a live-action Fungus the Bogeyman appeared on Go Wild, brought to life via an animatronic suit. This marks the first live-action depiction of the character. Just running for a little over a year, Newzoid is a satirical sketch show, mocking celebrities and politicians of the time, very similar to Spitting Image, although this time utilising rod puppets instead. The Phoenix and the Carpet is the third entry of the BBC's 5 Children It series, this time featuring a phoenix as the mystical creature, although the Samyad does reappear in the show, but only in a small capacity. The miniseries was based off the book by the same name, but it was far from the first adaptation. There was a movie released 2 years earlier called The Phoenix and the Magic Carpet, and another BBC series made back in 1976. On the CITV art programme Art Attack, there was a sentient busk head that would add commentary to the craft that had just been created. Initially, it was a human performer made up to look like a statuette head, but it was later changed to a latex puppet. Fall Feather Falls is about a cowboy named Tex, where after helping a Native American family, he's given 4 magical feathers. 2 of them helps both of his gun holsters to shoot without him touching them, and the 2 remaining feathers enable both his dog and horse to speak. The show was created and produced by Gerry Anderson and ran for 1 year on ITV in 1960. Running for 3 years on ITV was Dog and Duck, about a toy dog and duck coming to life when their owners aren't watching. Bookaboo was a CITV series, where the title character was a world-famous rock and roll player. However, as he says, if he can't get a story a day, then he just can't play. Fortunately, in every episode there's a special guest star that reads Bookaboo a good old story. By the end of the episode, it inspires Bookaboo to perform. Paul Zerden is a talented ventriloquist, appearing and winning on multiple different talent shows, alongside his most famous puppet, Sam. He was so successful that he was able to jump over the pond to appear in America's Got Talent. He didn't win in the show, but he's still a beloved icon in his home country. Torchy the Battery Boy was the second series by Gerry Anderson, about Torchy, a living toy, making journeys between the Earth and Toyland in the stars, travelling via his rocket ship. Pinocchio was a character that appeared on The Slammer, a CBBC talent/variety show about locked up performers where they put on a show for kids, and whichever one gets the loudest cheer gets to go free. Pinocchio was one of the core cast members that was an inmate on the show. He was a puppet performer having a variety of puppets in his collection. he was played by the real-life puppeteer Dave Chapman, who was a CBBC regular. Lenny the Lion was a ventriloquist dummy that was a performance with Terry Hall. Lenny and Terry were a popular act on TV during the 50s and 60s in the UK. At the peak of Lenny's popularity, his success was comparable to Sooty, Rainbow and Emu. But outside of Brits of a certain age, Lenny isn't exactly a household name anymore, with only a handful of clips and footage resurfacing online. In 1970, Rupert the Bear received his own marionette program on ITV, which aired for 7 years on the channel with 156 episodes. Me Bubba's Moo is a Gaelic-speaking program airing on BBC Scotland, with the first episode debuting in 2022. The Fab Lab was a CBeebies show, teaching preschoolers the science in nature and technology. The show featured 2 pixies named Trixie and Dixie, and the teacher of the series, a dog named Prof. The program hasn't been aired on British television in nearly 20 years, with a very few handful of episodes resurfacing on the internet. Riff was a dog that appeared on the CBeebies program, Carrie and David's Pop Shop, where they run a music shop where they create music for clients. The show was created by BBC Scotland. 30 episodes were produced, however they all aired within the span of a month in 2008, and no more programs have been commissioned since. Pog's program was a Channel 4 children's series that aired between 1985 and 1990. Where every episode would feature a special guest star in Pog's garden. The title character, Pog, was a little puppet, where in the beginning of every episode he would blow on the screen and write his name on the condensation. Cabby's Dragon is a Welsh-speaking children's programme about 2 dragons that live along the Tullilan Railway. It first aired in August of 2023. Tickle and Patch are 2 guinea pig characters that appeared on Channel 5's Milkshake between 1999 and 2005. The characters would frequently cross over with other Milkshake programs. Their show, Tickle, Patch and Friends, additionally aired in a variety of different places around the UK, most notably tourist and holiday destinations. Mucker the Monkey, Dogsby the Dog, and Tiggs the Orange Tiger are puppet characters that starred and featured in The Shiny Show, where the characters would participate in a little quiz game, where the prize object would be a shiny object. Nuzzle and Scratch are 2 llamas that appeared on their own series on CBeebies, airing on the channel between 2008 and 2011. Tamba the Dragon appeared in the CBeebies show Tickabilla, where he would act as the voice of the child on the show, being taught and educated by the presenters. Podge and Rog initially appeared on the Irish programme The Den, but after some time on the children's programme they moved off on their own spin-off series, taking a drastic left turn, aiming the show for adults. Space Patrol is frequently confused for being one of the Jerry Anderson programs. Anderson had no involvement with the show. This series was created, however, by his former business partner, by Arthur Probert. Emlyn the Gremlin was the puppet mascot for CBBC between 1999 and 2002. In the late 90s, CITV aired a TV show adaptation of the Swearengrett teddy bear books. The series attempted to incorporate face prosthetics to costume actors. The results were slightly interesting.
Lemons are yellowy like me. I'm so are pancakes.
You're a great big lemony pancake, and we're going to have to eat you!
But come later into the run, they swapped the heads out for animatronic ones instead, which in my own opinion, I think they look slightly more appealing. Scratch and Sniff were two hyenas that appeared on CITV during the mid and late 2000s. They received their own game show in 2007 called Scratch and Sniff's Den of Doom. 15 episodes were created, but today only 8 can be watched fully online.
Here's your question impossible. A man had 9 sheep. 9 sheep?
9 sheep!
All but 9 died. How many sheep did he have left? Gotta hurry him.
0.
No! 9!
In 1974, British film company Amicus Productions released a movie adaptation of the book The Land That Time Forgot, starring the late great Doug McClure. Visual effects artist Roger Dickens recommended that the production should use rubber puppets to bring the dinosaurs to life. The movie was successful enough to spawn a sequel, The People That Time Forgot, which again featured hand puppet rubber dinosaurs. Nightmare was a British game show where it had a group of players where one of them was blindfolded, having to navigate like this in a medieval setting, relying on their team to both describe and advise them on the next course of action. Despite being aimed for a younger demographic, the program took itself very seriously. In season 5 they introduced a dragon character called Smirkanoff, and in the following season Smirkanoff could talk. Dear Mr. Barker was a CBBC program that aired between 1995 to 1998, where viewers could write in to Mr. Barker, asking various questions about anything, and if it did get selected, Mr. Barker would devote a segment to the answer. For any viewer where their questions got to be featured on the show, they would be rewarded via the show sending off a t-shirt for them. Forget-Me-Not Farm was a children's program that aired on the BBC in the early 90s. It had a live-action segment with a scarecrow and 2 crows as puppets, and a stop-motion animated portion with farm animals. Ormond and Cheap was a puppet series that aired on ITV that was aimed towards very small children. It aired between 1983 and 1985. Ripley and Scuff was a puppet series that aired on CITV between 2002 and 2003. The show featured Ripley and Scuff going to various schools around the country and being ever so mischievous. The show did receive a DVD run, but today the discs are now incredibly hard to come across. Out of 60 episodes, only 1 is available to watch online. Dusty and Smudge were the main puppet characters on the milkshake program A House Just Like Yours, about the 2 titular little mice that come out during the night. The series ran for 34 episodes. The Scottish Four Feather Socks Puppet Theatre is a comedy act created by Kev F. Sutherland, featuring 2 bemusing sock characters that have largely appeared via theatre tour shows, but have occasionally appeared on television and still have an active YouTube channel. Space Pirates was a music program produced for CBeebies, starring Captain DJ, a dim-witted gullible pirate on the search for more music. The show produced 30 episodes and ran for just over a year on CBeebies from 2007 to 2008. Pig Attraction was a talk show featuring puppets, with Billy the Pig as the main host. Every week there would be a new puppet guest star that would feature on the show, usually the likes of other British puppet characters, but notably there was an episode that did feature Big Bird. Halakazoo was amongst some of the very first programs that was made for Milkshake. The show had a variety of different segments, involving music videos, reading a children's story, and an arts and crafts sequence. Molly and Rossa are 2 larger-than-life characters that come from the mystical land of Morbegs. The program they appeared in, called the Morbegs, occasionally had the characters speaking in simple Irish. The Slow Norris was a CITV program that ran during the mid to late 90s about a young little human girl called Allie who would tell Norris stories, with other animals of the forest joining in to listen. A Bear Behind was about Lizzie and her knapsack bear travelling all over Britain, and when she places her bear named Boz down, he springs to life. Green Claws was a children's programme that aired on BBC Two for just a little over a year. Box was a puppet character that was introduced on the show All Sorts. The programme hadn't previously featured puppets before, but in an attempt to relaunch the show, new characters were brought on board. And it seemed to have worked, as Box did stay with the show up until its very end. Roger de Courcy was a ventriloquist who had a bear called Nookie. They appeared on various variety and stage shows over the years. In 1981, they did a short-lived series called Now for Nookie, which only lasted for 6 episodes. In the 1973 Doctor Who serial Carnival of Monsters, it featured the monstrous giant worm-like drash eggs, which were the main threat of the story. Despite having 5 eyeballs, drash eggs have incredibly poor eyesight. Thus, in the episode, they rely on their sense of smell to seek out their victim. While the drash eggs have yet to have reappeared in another Doctor Who story, they've remained to be a cult favourite monster for Doctor Who fans. Amusingly, their name drash eggs are actually an anagram for dish rag. Apparently, when the puppets were being constructed, to get the shape of the heads, the team used real Chihuahua head skulls as a base. In the following season, it was hoped that the same puppet-like techniques could be used to bring to life some rather convincing dinosaurs. Jackdaw is the pet bird from Sally Marley, a franchise that's designed to help Welsh children to learn to read. Jackdaw is typically portrayed as a puppet for whenever Sally Marley is featured in live action. Bugs Bite was a UK programme that was initially aired on GMTV, before being moved over in its later run to Channel 4. The show was about bugs who came into a kitchen after the resident humans had gone away. Wanderly Wagon was an Irish programme featuring an entourage of puppet and human characters, where they travel all over Ireland, most notably going to magical lands in Irish mythology. The wagon even had the ability to fly, as high all the way up into space, or even dive deep down into the ocean. Airing between 1997 and 1998 is CITV's Saturday morning show MASH, which featured a puppet monkey called Jarvis. Unfortunately, there isn't a great amount of footage of this programme on the internet, aside from a handful of clips on the web. Dappledown Farm initially aired for 2 years on ITV between 1990 and 1992, but then after a 6-year hiatus, the show moved over to Milkshake on Channel 5, running for just about 1 year, and repeats continued up until the end of 2004. Toon Room was a popular series that aired on TCC, featuring the late Mark Spate, showing viewers on how to draw various pictures. All the while, Flick the Lamb tries to distract him. Unfortunately, there have been no full episodes that have been uploaded online, with the only thing made available is a short 44-second clip. Hello, okay, I might have gotten slightly confused during my research. I was trying to feature some puppet characters from Northern Ireland, but I've only just realised that I've included some characters from Dublin, Ireland, and Dublin's not part of the UK. So yeah, sorry to all the Irish that have been watching so far. I guess I could go back and change the Iceberg, but I've already kind of recorded bits for later on in the Iceberg, and we must be about 40 an hour in already. I'm way too deep into this project now, so sod it. It's a UK plus Irish puppet Iceberg. Sorry, not everything on the list is truly British. but hey, it is what it is. Anyway, we've got Dustin the Turkey here. He first appeared on Irish television on The Den in 1989 and was a core cast puppet for the next 31 years, last appearing in 2020 with his long-running stance. Dustin the Turkey is the most iconic puppet character on Irish television. Sage and Onion were two leprechaun characters that appeared on Live and Kicking, being regulars on the BBC between 1995 and 2001. Fun Song Factory initially started as a preschool direct-to-video series, but later on, new episodes were commissioned and being aired on CITV. The franchise lasted between 1994 to 2006. In the CITV programme Jamboree, they would cut to interspersed segments with the Bopkins throughout the duration of the episode. Playdays was the Sesame Street equivalent for the UK during the late 80s and 1990s. Just like Sesame Street, it featured a plethora of puppet characters. Playbox was a 1987 preschool series that aired on Channel 5 and had a sustainable run lasting for 6 seasons and 60 episodes. It was notable for being the first television series for Hands Up, who have gone on to do so many more programmes in British TV. Smart Teenies aired on CBeebies during the early 2000s. It was a spin-off show from Smart from CBBC, being very much a preschool version of that series. In the CBeebies version, they featured a new puppet character called Doogie. Sandy and Mr. Flipper were two puppet characters from the programme Sandy and Mr. Flipper. Sandy was a young, energetic but warm-hearted character, where Mr. Flipper was old, cautious and cold-loving. The Softies are about 3 creatures called the Softies that come from a magical garden where the whole world is, well, soft to the touch. 3 softy friends called Comfy, Cosy and Cuddle want to explore the non-soft world, but not to adventure too far. They usually just stray to the very near end of the magic garden, all while wearing some hard helmets. Toby was a spell dragon that appeared on the ITV Kids programme Puddle Lane, where in the show the magician tells them stories. So Jonathan Rosk and Catherine Jenkins played a sausage game show on national television back in 2013, where it utilised puppet sausages, but outside of a preview on the BBC's YouTube channel, that specific programme can no longer be watched in full today. Philip and Madge were 2 planned characters that were featured in the CBBC game show Trapped. In this section of the game, it would feature Phyllis, who would read a true or false question on the seed. The contestants would then decide if the question was true or false, feeding the true questions to Phyllis, and then the lie questions to Madge. Philip and Madge only appeared during the first season of the show, making a grand total of 5 appearances. Ratcons 2 was a children's programming block that aired on the Kids channel during the early 90s, where the hosts and the puppets would be all on board a spaceship. I've got to point this out, on the Hands Up YouTube channel, they've uploaded a little compilation of some of the outtakes of the show.
When did you do this?
What's that all over it? So, something pretty exclusive.
Argos.
With the cast and puppets uttering some very unreserved words. Most of it is censored, barring this one line.
I'm really looking forward to being old.
No, he wasn't.
I'm going to be a right old bastard. No change there.
Sarah and Hoppity was a marionette series that aired on ITV based off the book series by the same name. It first debuted in 1962 and ran for just over a year. Today, only the pilot episode and episode 46 are known to exist. Gonk was a sock puppet that appeared on bumpers on CITV. Gonk was a character that didn't utter any words. Instead, he would briefly show up for about 8 to 7 seconds and make a siren noise. The character appeared on bumpers between 2006 and 2009. During the late 2000s, CBBC would air chin sketches sporadically throughout the day on their channel. At the time, they were immensely popular with children, who would upload their own recreations of the sketches onto YouTube. But as for the original chin bumpers that aired on the channel, only one can be watched in full today online. Potamus Park was a preschool series that aired on CITV, running from the mid to the late 90s. The program was about a family of hippos. The show was sponsored by Kinder's Happy Hippo biscuits. Sookie was a hairy monster that appeared on the Irish programme for children The Den. He was a replacement puppet for when Zig and Zag had left the show. In the in-universe backstory, Sookie came about after Dustin had neglected to do the washing for the socks. Thus the laundry had manifested into the creature we now know as Sookie. Dunstan was a brain puppet that co-hosts CBBC with Holly, although they only held this position for a short time in 2008. This is because they were mainly stand-ins for Ed and Oucho, who were temporarily off filming their own spin-off show. Holly has appeared in a few other CBBC shows over the years, but post his hosting days, Dunstan has rarely been seen again. Patrick was a magical bunny that appeared on the show Tricky Business that aired between 1989 to 1991 on the BBC, lasting for 2 seasons and 27 episodes. PJ Mole was a character that was featured on PJ Storytime. It aired on Disney Playhouse UK during 2004, with a fluctuating host per episode reading PJ a story. And by the end of the episodes, PJ got a little bit more than just a good old story.
Well, perhaps a huggle huggle, snuggle snuggle might help.
Oh, thank you for listening to my story, PJ.
And thank you for reading me that story, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Milky the Cat and Shake the Dog were 2 puppet characters that appeared on The Milkshake Show, airing on Channel 5 for a run of 52 episodes. Ike and Webber were 2 puppet preteens who were featured in segments that acted as interludes between other programs and cartoons on TCC, a network that aired in Britain, Europe and Mid-East Africa. Beachcomber Bay was a milkshake program that aired on Channel 5. According to IMDb, the show ran between 2001 and 2003, although there are some episodes on YouTube that list the episodes of coming out in 1999. There are about 10 episodes that are available to watch online, although there may have been as many as 154 episodes produced. So currently, the majority of the show is lost media. Senfold Divers was a marionette series about Mr. Divers, where him and his penguin Mr. Perkins go out for hire helping out people. 13 episodes were produced for the show, but today it's believed that only 1 episode is known to survive. And exactly when the show was produced and aired isn't exactly clear. Some dates provide 1966, while other sources say that the show was made in 1969. Foxtail was a 1985 puppet series about Grandma Fox telling her tales about when she was a young lady, on the mishaps that happened with her and the other animals. The stories were typically based off other European folk tales. The series was an adaptation of the Foxtails book, published back in 1976. The show was voiced and narrated by Peter Davison, who had previously been the 5th incarnation of Doctor Who 1 year prior. The Magic House first broadcast on Scottish television between 1994 and 1996, and later aired on ITV. The characters of the programme were household appliances come to life. The intro uses the music from the Beatles' It's All Too Much. The show was popular enough for the characters to later appear in several commercials for the Trustees Saving Bank for Children. Jimmy and Duke are two cats that appeared on the BBC programme Cat's Eyes, where they're always plotting some scheme to sneak inside a pizza shop. Typically, their methods always revolves around some kind of scientific principle, as the show was aimed to teach kids about primary science. It was a particular favourite for teachers and children of the time, often being shown in schools. Rag, Tag and Bobtail was a programme that was made for the weekly series Watching with Mother, starring the puppet characters of Rag the Hedgehog, Tag the Mouse, and Bobtail the Rabbit. Occasionally, 5 baby rabbits would appear in the show. The episodes were filmed in one continuous take. 26 of them were produced, but 2 of them never aired. In 1987, one episode was included with the Watch with Mother VHS, containing other shows of the lineup. It can easily be found online, but today it's the only episode that is publicly accessible. Running for 33 episodes on the BBC, Billy Bean and His Funny Machine, featuring the title character Billy, who had a very unique machine, producing anything he needed just via drawing it. Accompanying him was Yoo-Hoo the Cuckoo, who would lay an egg in every episode where it slipped down the machine. The programme had a run on the BBC between 1953 and 1954, and was revived 5 more times between 1954 and 1957. The show has never received any kind of home media release, and it's not known if any of the episodes do still exist. Humphrey Cushion and Dusty Mop were puppet characters that were featured on Hickory's House. The show ran between 1973 and 1977. All episodes are known to exist in the archive, but if they will ever be released on either home media or streaming has yet to be seen. Mr. Fix-It was the first Scottish children's television show ever made. Toy fixer / presenter Mr. Fix-It is the only human on the show. He inhabits the programme with other puppet characters. There's Mr. Benjamin, an old seafarer, Hop, my thumb, an enthusiastic chap, Silly Willy, a donkey that's, well, far from sensible, and Little Scotty, a Scottish terrier. Unfortunately, being such an old show, there aren't any episodes available to watch, and there are very scantily few photographs online. The Jingle Bells were a pair of bell characters that appeared on the CITV channel round about the Christmas season, in either the late 90s or most likely the early 2000s, and unfortunately there doesn't appear to be any footage of them on the internet. Between 1988 and 1990, a strange alien puppet named Gilbert appeared and starred in several shows on ITV, each one progressively trying to aim to an older audience. Gilbert was largely an improvised character, leaving it unpredictable to his co-hosts and guest stars as to what he'd be up to. ITV were really trying to make Gilbert the next big puppet sensation of Britain. But after 1990, Gilbert has seemed to have disappeared off the airway. The character had partial ownership by the puppeteer John Eccleston, who sadly passed away several years ago. It's theorised that Gilbert the puppet may be still in his family's possession. The Ed and Zed Show was a 1970s BBC children's programme. They would feature weekly guest stars such as music groups, and showing excerpts of the newest Disney films. Ed had a bit of a grouchy and grumpy attitude, where Zed in comparison could be really cheeky to Ed's expense. 9 episodes were produced, but today only 7 are known to exist. Brian the Dinosaur was a bit of a northern version of Roland Rat. He appeared during the 2nd season of the BBC Saturday morning kids show Parallel 9. He would stay on until the show ended in its 3rd season. The Spooks of Bottle Bay was a puppet programme that aired on ITV during the early to mid-90s, starring the character of Sydney Slush with his dog Max. He had a pair of siblings where they made life in Bottle Bay a misery, but he's got a trio of ghostly mates who assist him to stop any wrongdoing by his brother and sister. The Rimini Riddle was a puppet Irish show that aired during the early 90s. The show follows 3 siblings as they're forced to live with their horrible aunt. The show had a fairly successful run, lasting for 3 seasons and 95 episodes. But today, the show is mostly lost media, with at most only half of an episode re-emerging online, although unfortunately being transferred via being recorded off a television monitor. Snotzer was a laid-back, cool dude Irish pig that appeared on the RTE show The Den. On the show, there would be a game called What's Snot, where 2 callers would take it in turns on having a guess as to what Snotzer was thinking of. But in 2004, there was an infamous occasion where a child caller named Kevin didn't seem to get the concept of the game.
Kevin?
Yeah?
Would you like to ask a question? The Snotzer?
Where'd you get your shades?
Where'd you get me shades? Kevin, you can ask it. It can be a person, place, thing, or object.
Wait 1 minute. I just have to do something.
Well, Kevin, listen, you take your time. It's only live national television, so don't worry about it. Yeah.
This has become one of the most infamous and hilarious moments in Irish television. 13 years later, the presenter Francie Boyland reunited with Kevin on his radio show and got to the bottom of asking him what on earth was going on. Apparently, Kevin was having a really faulty phone line, and he was running all over the house to try and find a phone with a better connection. Tinker and Tucker were 2 koalas that were featured in the show The Tinker and Tucker Club, hosted by Jean Morton, referred to as Auntie Jean in the programme. The show was immensely successful, having an open fan club that had to be shut down due to the overwhelming amount of patrons. The show was aired in the Midlands between 62 to 70. Shortly after the show was over, the Tinker and Tanga puppets were stolen and have yet to have reappeared. It was thought for a short while that there wasn't much film material left from the programmes, but in 2016 a DVD was released of the show with newly found footage, along with a whole host of bonus features. Ollie Beak and Fred Barker were both the hosts of the 5 o'clock club, airing up in the north between 63 and 66. They'd often have weekly guest stars. One of them featured the television debut of the Beatles. Unfortunately, one of the only pieces of footage left of the pair is of an 8-minute television promo of the upcoming shows of that evening.
In a moment we'll be with Associated Television for all the excitement of Stingray. Just imagine this delicate instrument can bring you all the favourite children's characters.
On The Brian Connolly Show in 1995, Brian introduced the puppet Larry the Loafer in a little moment that was meant to be reminiscent of children's television with a presenter and a puppet. But something you certainly wouldn't see if this was intended to be viewed by a younger audience is Brian constantly hitting on Larry.
Because I read all about that in a cookbook by Mrs. Beaton. It's a puppy!
Meeps is a Welsh-speaking programme about a multicultural sheep family. Meeps, when translated, is actually the Welsh saying of bar. The show got redubbed for English and Arabic, although today the show is relatively obscure and hard to come across, with only a handful of the Welsh episodes up online, as well as 1 English dub. Sam on Bosque Island was a 1972 series by the BBC to help kids to learn to read. The show was about Sam, played by Tony Robinson in one of his earliest TV appearances. Sam would be magically whisked away to Bosqueland, where we would get to see a story on the island, with Sam providing commentary. The inhabitants of the island, called the Bosque, would be brought to life via stop motion, but would then change to hand puppets when they interacted with Sam. The show was also a collaboration with Small Films, best well known for their stop motion series of Bagpuss, The Clangers and Ivor the Engine. 20 episodes were produced of Bosque Island, and they reran throughout the 1970s on the BBC. Sausage was a marionette dog that was brought on near to the end of the BBC's children's show Picture Book, a programme that was meant to encourage kids to do various things. An episode with Sausage got to be featured on a VHS compilation of Watching with Mother during the late 1980s. On a 1966 episode of the Morecambe and Wise show, they have a crack at trying to do a puppet show to entertain the kids. It goes down as well as you think.
It's a puppy you! Get up! You don't put it on the end of a stick! Oh. You put your hand inside! I'm not putting my hand inside! It might not have been drawn!
Woolligard was a 1950 BBC children's programme that was telecast live, with Humphrey Lescott as the main presenter of the show, alongside his marionette co-star Mr. Turnip, voiced by Peter Hawkins. The show ran on Saturdays up until 1956, and even spawned several bits of merchandise. However, today, no episodes are available to watch, and it's not known if any even do still exist. In 1952, the BBC held a talent show competition titled Talent Night, where it featured various different performers. The final winner of the show was Harry Corbett alongside his puppet bear called Teddy. Afterwards, Corbett would become a regular host during the children's time slot on BBC TV. Not too long afterwards, slight changes were made of Teddy, blackening his ears and nose to appear more visually distinct on black and white telly, and being renamed Sooty. There are very rare photographs of Sooty's original incarnation as Teddy, and as far as we know, there doesn't seem to be any surviving footage. A Robovian Legend was a BBC marionette show that aired between 1955 and 1964, set in a fantasy land ruled by King Rufus XIV. Alongside his wife, Queen Caroline, the show features their magical gardener, Arthur Weatherspoon, who tends to cause the issues of the episodes via his magic. There's a pet chicken called Henrietta who lays golden eggs, who keeps the royal family's wealth in check, and an Indian chap called Matt Gregor, who tends to be the antagonist of the show. Unfortunately, at the time of recording, it appears that only one episode is available to watch. However, its 1976 revival is more readily available to watch. Wakawa was a pump duck puppet character that appeared on Welsh children's TV from the 1980s to the 1990s. He was a popular enough character to warrant his own plushies, although hasn't prospered in other British territories, as he's still largely obscure outside of Wales. Combat Sheep is a spin-off special from the puppet show Rotten Trolls, starring the sheep character Commando Harris, where due to budget cuts after being fired of being the military mascot, he teams up with other sheep mascots, who have found themselves out of work as well, to go up against the military. The humour of the special is on a kin of something you would see on Monty Python.
An expert in martial arts, she could break a man's neck with only her bare hands and a metal bar.
It aired on December 30th of 2001 on BBC Two, and actually earned quite favourable ratings. But alas, there were no more adventures with Commander Harris, which is a dear shame as this was pretty bloody funny to watch. Itsy and Bitsy were two spider characters that would appear on the show Papa Play, where they would assist the presenter and create various things, especially out of spare parts that can easily be found around the house, making it simple enough for any child to follow. In 1962, there was a program called The Three Scampies, about three circus performers. There was the main lead, Harris Williams, and alongside him were two puppet characters. There was Spike McPike, an aggressive Scottish hedgehog, and a fox named Basil, who would eventually go off to have a more popular solo career, while poor old Spike has fallen into relative obscurity. There are no known recordings of his appearances on TV, and only two pictures of him online. In 1964, there was a pilot episode for a marionette sci-fi series called Pool Star, which the series would have been about the ongoing tension between humans and Martians. The concept was created and written by Roberta Lee, who had previously worked with Jerry Anderson some years earlier. Pool Star may have been created as a response to the success of the Anderson sci-fi shows. However, the show never got picked up. A theoretical reason as to why is perhaps maybe because of the Anderson shows. The market was already oversaturated by many other marionette sci-fi shows. On Harry Corbett's episode of This Is Your Life, it was revealed by his former music tutor that he gifted Harry a hand puppet.
A sooty glove puppet, not a sooty, sorry, a glove puppet, a monkey glove puppet. Puppet.
What have you had to drink so far?
Making it Harry's first puppet side character, although there's sadly no visual record of Harry and the monkey.
He put it on his hand and he did all kinds of things with it. And I thought, well, it's as if he's found his long-lost brother.
Thank you very much.
Based off the book by Annette Mill, Colonel Croc is a retired army vehicle who lives in the calm village of Much Winding. The show first aired on the BBC before being switched over to ITV, being a pseudo-model/marionette production. In the one and only episode that's available to watch online via the BFI player, it appears that Colonel Croc had a luxurious production value behind it. Instead of being filmed live on magnetic tape, the episodes were instead staged and photographed on film material, which not only gives it a richer image, but shooting on film made it far more easier to edit for the time. It certainly stands out from other children's shows of the era. Mary Ma, or translated into English, Big Fun, is a Welsh children's show where, if I had to inject my own perspective over it, if cavemen had the ability of making TV programs, I think this would be the result of that. The show was about characters with conflicting and different personalities, who would all focus and talk about a particular topic. The show was deliberately aimed for very small children. Regardless of the execution, it's quite clear that the filmmakers certainly didn't have a lot of money behind the scenes, as all the puppets are literally sock puppets. I don't speak Welsh, but maybe if I did, I might appreciate the program a little bit more. Maybe. But from where I currently stand, this is the oddest British show I have ever come across. Well, this has been quite the journey. As you can tell, anything to do with the UK, I love going really in depth about. It's certainly my favourite subject to cover. Anyway, thank you so much if you've made it this far in. If this content is your kind of cup of tea, then subscribing would be humbly appreciated. That will do for now. I'll see you next time. Ta-ta.